for this session of, hello everyone again. Thank you for joining us on this session of Leveraging Your Inner Brilliance with Sherilyn Castleman. Thank you, Sherilyn, for agreeing to do this presentation with us. This is a program targeted at helping our services group as well as our larger IQVIA community, supporting our diversity inclusion commitment this year. So again, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Mike Utel and Stacey Hutchinson, for supporting this idea brought upon by the Services Engagement Committee and the REACH Bridgewater chapter. Today we'll have Sherilyn Castleman speaking, Lori Toner moderating. We will have an introduction from our REACH Bridgewater events lead, Jerry Johnson. And again, as the REACH chapter lead, Kyle Davis, I want to thank you for joining us and enjoy the presentation. I'll now turn it over to Jerry.
This is our first external speaker event. Let me give you some housekeeping rules. You can type your questions if you have any in the Q&A section of your screen. If you want to chat with the panelists, you could also place a chat in there. Sherilyn will try as much as possible to shout out to the people that she knows. Lori will be our moderator. She will introduce Sherilyn and take us on our way on our journey of leveraging your inner brilliance with the one and only Sherilyn Castleman. There you go, Lori.
Thank you, Jerry. Good morning, everyone. Good evening. I am Lori Toner. I am part of the Ops Excellence team under TEAS. I am also one of the co-chairs of the Services Engagement Committee. And I want to welcome you all to our conversation with Sherilyn Castleman, Leveraging Your Inner Brilliance, Step Up Your Game, and Take Your Career to the Next Level. Sherilyn has helped Fortune 500 clients in the global sales executive as a global sales executive for more than 20 years. Many of you know her from her AHM days, where she was a vice president and account team lead for several of our clients, including Teva Pharmaceuticals, Merck, Jazz Pharmaceuticals, and DSI. Currently, she is the Chief Learning Officer for Sista in Sales, which empowers women of color across the sales sector. She is also managing partner and executive coach for CGI, which is a sales training and coaching firm. And she is the author of What's in the Cards. I have my copy right here. It's 5 post-pandemic sales strategies. As many of you know, Sherilyn prides herself on changing mindsets as well as instructing and inspiring others to action. Today's presentation is designed to be a fast-paced, lighthearted, and fun conversation. So come prepared, buckle up. We're going to have a good adventure in learning and laughter. Again, as Jerry said, feel free to use the Q&A to drop your questions in there. Or if you want to say hi to Sherilyn, you can also put in a chat for her. And please give a warm welcome to our friend, Sherilyn Castleman. Good morning, Sherilyn.
Good morning. I am absolutely thrilled to be here. I'm so excited. I'm so honored that you and Jerry reached out to me. And I just want to start by saying hello to all my former colleagues, peers, and friends over from AHM. Shout me out in the chat box if I have any friends there, and let me know who's there. And just say hi. It's so good to see each and every one of you. And like Lori said, we're going to have a good time today. If you have any questions for me about what I'm doing currently, my journey, my path, choices that I've made, just drop them in the chat, and Lori or Jerry will make sure I get those questions and we'll answer those. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, to Lori. And hello to everybody. And I wish I could see your faces too, but know that I'm thrilled to be here connecting with you.
Great. Okay, let's get started.
Hi, Tracy.
I see a few people coming in. Okay, let's get started. So the title of today's conversation is about leveraging your inner brilliance. Can you expand on that concept for us of inner brilliance, and how can we use that in our personal and professional lives?
Absolutely. I would love to do that. I want to say that I didn't see the chat and the names there, so I just want to say hello to Heather and Amy and David and Emma and Angel and Angie. A couple years ago, I had the pleasure of going to a jazz festival, and Tia Fuller, who is a jazz saxophone artist, she's just amazing. She brought tears to my eyes. Her new album was called Diamond Cut. And when I did some research about what diamond cut is we're all familiar with, a rough diamond. But what diamond cut does is it cuts a diamond so that the diamond shines from the inside out. And so many of us, we dim our lights. We shine, we turn down our lights. And when we turn our lights down, we don't shine on other people. And so if you want to do amazing things, you have to let yourself shine. When you shine, your children shine. Lori, when you shine, your team shines. I know that when Aisha shines, her entire team shines. And so what I want to talk about today are things that we can do so that we can shine, so that we can also shine our light on other people. And like I've said for years, a high tide raises all boats, which means if I succeed, everybody around me succeeds. So not only when you dim your light do we hurt ourselves, we hurt other people around us. And so the first thing that I challenge people to do, and I'm going to say that I had the opportunity to have dinner with one of my mentors, and this was Bill Green. And Bill Green is the former CEO of Accenture. And what Bill said to me is, Sherilyn, when you criticize people, you raise their defensiveness. But if you challenge people, you raise their game. So I'm going to challenge each and every one of you today. And anybody who remembers me, that's what I was about. I challenge people. And I want each and every one of you to think of at least one thing that you're going to do differently coming out of this talk to help shine your light on other people so that everybody gets better and we create a place to work that we can all thrive in. So the first thing that I'm going to challenge you to do is to figure out what your vision is for yourself. And so what I usually do, and I used to do this with my team, is I challenge you to think about what is your wish. So Lori, if you had to think about your career and where you want to be 5 years from now, what is your wish? So just jot that down or note that in your head. What is your wish? The second thing is, you guys are all amazing. You're going to hit that. That's an easy one. What is your wild wish? So now what would you do if that wish came true? What would your wild wish be? Okay, so I've worked with so many of you. I know that that one's going to be easy too. What I really want to challenge you is, what is your fantasy? So what would your career look like? What would your brilliance look like if you knew you couldn't lose? And 5 years from now, what would your fantasy career look like? That's what I want you to shoot for.
Interesting. So it's also about, we talked a little bit about how we can also look in ourselves. I think so many of us start to get into that imposter syndrome where we start to doubt ourselves, or we feel like we're not good enough, or that we're almost frauds. I know it happened to me a couple days ago. I was in a conversation and I was like, somebody called me, "Oh, Lori, you're an expert at this." And I'm like, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. And I almost doubted myself. How do you talked a little bit with me about superpowers and just finding that superpower. How do we break that mindset of imposter syndrome and find our superpower?
Okay, so one of the things that's important to remember is every one of us does something well, and we do something better than 90% of everybody else. And so if you stop and think about what you do well, that's your superpower. You could be like Lori, and I think Lori is an incredible, she likes knowledge. She's always raising her hand. She's always, Aisha is an amazing leader. I remember David Angulo. He is so persistent and tenacious. I remember when he was getting his MBA and working in facilities. He was so tenacious. He's so persistent. That's one of his superpowers. Heather has an ability to make friends with everybody. That's Heather's superpower. That's why she's such a great person in client services. She builds relationships. Maybe you're a networker and you can connect people. Maybe you're an innovator. And so if you don't know what your superpower is, I have 3 ways that you can go out and figure that out. The first one is, hopefully over the time of your career, you've been keeping what I call your greatest hits. And if you don't have your greatest hits, one of my challenges is go into your phone app or start a folder in your computer and just start listing all the incredible things that you've done. There's something called the 100 list. I challenge you to make a list of 100 things that you've done incredible throughout your career, 100 incredible things that you've done. You do it in one sitting, and you just write, and you just keep writing. And when you start, the 40 will come easy, and then the next 20 will be a little harder. But those last 20 will be really insightful about what you do well. Number 2, if you really are struggling with that list, send an email, and the email should say something like this, and I'm actually going to read it here because I sent this out, and I was so blown away about what people wrote. Just write an email to about 5 to 7 of your former colleagues or current colleagues and say, I need your help. Take a couple minutes to tell me about my top 5 personality traits or quirks. Share anything fun or unique experience you had with me. Be brave, don't be shy, and reserved in your responses. There's no right or wrong answers. You will be just blown away, and your superpower will pop out of those emails that you get back from your friends. Take that and start leveraging that as your superpower. And be okay with it. I mean, be proud of it. Polish your superpower and be amazing with it, and that will help your brilliance shine. So number 1 is knowing what your vision is for yourself. Know what you want to do and where you want to go and where you see your career. Number 2, figure out what your superpower is and figure out what you do better than anybody else and just master that and be okay with it. And the third thing I want to talk about is imposter syndrome. And I do a lot of coaching of women, and that's what I spend most of my time doing. And I hear that, I think, just about with every woman. And there's a new article out that Harvard Business Review published about imposter syndrome. It is the fastest downloaded article that's ever been out in the history of Harvard Business Review. I would encourage everyone to download it. It talks about imposter syndrome and what companies can do to eliminate it. But what the article basically says is that all of us, when we start a new skill or a new project, we're very nervous about it. We don't have confidence. But what happens is a lot of women and underrepresented minorities will say to themselves, "Oh, it's an imposter syndrome." And so one of the best things you can do as a manager or as a peer is remind somebody, "No, Lori, you are a great leader. No, Aisha, you are a great leader." You know, it's not that you that you're being an imposter. You're still learning, and once you master it, you become confident in it. So we want to step away from using that imposter syndrome. We want to step away from branding ourselves that way, and just recognizing that I'm in a learning curve. Once I learn this, once I master this, I'm going to be great with this. And seeing yourself in that role.
You know, and you talk about so seeing ourselves in that role. You talk about have gotten jobs that maybe didn't exist before, or talk about a little bit about your experience of how you got promoted into a position that maybe didn't previously exist, or how you jumped your career forward, and a lot of times too by trying to work not twice. We've been told to work twice as hard, or we've been told we have to do it twice as better as everybody else. But really, it's about how do we break that mindset too, so that we're actually doing the work without having to constantly prove ourselves.
So there's a couple of things. So number 1, so there's 3 things I think that we need to do as professionals. And the first one is to be extremely competent in what you do. So understand what those skills are that you really need to do your job well. The second one is to care. You really have to give a damn about your clients, about your company. And the third one is to have confidence. Once you have mastered your job and you're doing your job well, what you want to do is look for opportunities of growth. Look for opportunities to challenge your company. If something's not working right, take it on as your initiative and come up with a plan to fix it. Now, how you drive change is first you have to recognize what's right. So recognize what's right at your company. What do you like about it? Is it a great place to work? Do the people get along well? Are they innovative? Is the system broken? Is the technology broken? So again, challenge what's broken, but celebrate what's right. And one way to challenge what's broken is get a team together or even by yourself and come up with a vision for that. Come up with a plan for it. And then you begin pitching and selling and building support around it. And one way to do that is to get a stakeholder and to get a champion within your organization. So let's say that you determine that, I remember that I worked for a company and we had a portal that our clients could use. And my clients kept complaining about it. And I could talk to the team and they were like, yeah, they just complain. Well, I logged into the portal one day and I had somebody log me in and sit with me and I was like, this is horrible. It was the worst thing. And I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe we'd make our clients go through these hoops. And so I was sitting in an executive meeting one day and I said, hey, I'd like to challenge everybody around here, around the table. I'd like to take 5 minutes. And I put a challenge on the agenda. And the CEO was there and the president. And I said, how many of you guys have been in our portal? And they're like, no, nobody had been in the portal in over 10 years. And I said, let's just take a minute and check out our portal. And I had invited one of our super users to log in and show the portal. And the entire executive team was sitting there going, oh my goodness, this is horrible. So I didn't criticize the portal. I didn't criticize the tech team who owned the portal. I just challenged people to take a look at it. Well, clearly we reallocated funds and the portal was rebuilt. That's how you drive change. I knew that we delivered value to our clients, but our portal was broken. So identify one area, and you can have your maverick moment, but do it through challenging people. You know, challenge people, hold up a success. I was talking to a guy yesterday who used to work at Google, and Google has this whole system in place where you can go out and try things and challenge people. And they had fixed something in their technology that was broken in about 4 months. And the company he was with, they were saying it was going to take 2 years. Well, he just showed, he said, look, Google did it in 4 months. I challenged my team to do it in 6 months. Well, the team went out and did it in 6 months instead of 2 years. So it's just challenge people. And so if you are continually solving problems, if you're continually challenging your organization, if you have a vision, you're going to create a new position for yourself. So find an area that needs a leader and go and lead in that area. And then write your job description, go on LinkedIn, find somebody who's doing that job and volunteer.
So it sounds like by doing this, we can actually almost create ways to help us get like unstuck in our careers, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
just by doing that. So that's
Absolutely.
amazing because I think you know, a lot of times now, especially in this virtual world, there have been challenges, you know, with getting ideas across, making connections, bonding as a team, and just kind of making those personal, you know, have those personal engagements. And I think that's been a little bit difficult. How do we continue to move through these trying times as far as, you know, having conversations, having our ideas put forth? I mean, I think a lot of times it was already challenging before in the live world, and now in the virtual, we sometimes feel really isolated. And then sometimes we want to put our ideas forth and maybe we're afraid to, or we don't know how to put our best foot forward, or maybe because of our experiences, we don't want to because we don't think our voice is going to get heard. So how can we continue to create that environment where we feel included and connected and belonging?
So I think we're going to head there, but I think so a couple of things. And I want to backtrack just for a second. Look up the job you want on LinkedIn and build those skills. So if you're a manager and you want to be a director, I was talking to somebody and she said, oh, I thought I was doing the job of a senior manager, but then when I really got in the job, I realized I wasn't doing that at all. So if there's a job you want, talk to people who have that job, read that job description, do a gap analysis, understand where the gap is in your skills and knowledge, build those skills and knowledge, and then do that job. And you will get promoted, and make it part of your vision. So going back to what you said, a couple things about working virtually. One of the things that I talk about in my book and to clients is that every single one of us has one thing in common now. We all have been battered and bruised from this pandemic. Everybody has been impacted. And so what we have to do is we have to connect and we have to build relationships. And the best way to build a relationship is through empathy. And so when I first started in sales, I was taught that empathy was the feel, felt, found method. And Lori, I don't know if you've ever heard of that, where you say, I know how you feel, I felt the same way, and I have found it, and you give somebody your solution. Well, anytime you start a conversation from the word I, you're not being empathetic. What empathy is being present. It is listening to people between the words. And one of the best ways to be present and have presence is to do box breathing. And so I'm just going to stop for a second and show you guys what box breathing is in case you don't know or you don't practice yoga. And so we're just going to do it together here for a second. So we're going to take a full breath in to the count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it at the top. 2, 3, 4. Now blow it out to the count of 4. 2, 3, 4. Now hold it at the bottom. 2, 3, 4. Now what box breathing does is it stimulates our parasympathetic nervous system, which slows our heart rate, lowers our blood pressure, and quiets our brain. It allows us to be present. And being present is what empathy is about. And when you're present, you can listen to what's going on between the words. And people can't listen to you if they've got other things going on in their head. So you need to understand, are they worried because their team is just getting ready to go through a rift? Are they worried because they're sending their kids off to school and they're really concerned about their safety? Are they worried about their elderly parents and how they're faring through what's going on? So we just have to, as a community, be more empathetic with our peers, with our clients about what's going on. And if we connect with people, people will listen to us. And so that's one of the things that I encourage people to do is just be present, be empathetic. Have courage. And when you listen to other people and you connect with other people, they want to listen to you, especially if you're about solving if you have solutions to their problems.
I know as a manager for me, especially because these have been such trying times, sometimes I've struggled a little bit with the conversations, trying to have conversations with people because people are going through so much, and in some ways I want to be able to relate. My boss Aisha, has said to me, I know sometimes this can be particularly difficult for you because you're an empath and you just want to make it better. You want to give people a hug and just make it better for them. You worry about people. But I've struggled a bit about having conversations and starting conversations, especially those conversations that are tough to start or tough to have. Well, so what advice could you give, our leaders to help continue to have safe conversations?
Absolutely. So the acronym that I use in mnemonic is SAFE, S-A-F-E. You might want to jot that down. And I also have a handout that Lori will talk about how to get the handouts at the end. But what I think Ben and Jerry said it best. Ben and Jerry's put out a press release that silence is not an option. When we are silent when something goes on, what you're basically saying to your colleagues, to your community is, I don't care. So silence is not an option. But what I heard from a lot of my colleagues and peers is, but what do I say? What do I do? So I came up with this simple acronym, and the first one is S, and S stands for stance. Take a stance. Have the courage to stand up in front of your team, to your peers, and say, I will not tolerate bullying. I will not tolerate prejudice. I will not tolerate unconscious bias. And when we're talking a second about what those are and what you can do, but just taking a stance is so critical and so important. Then people know where you stand. So if you haven't taken a stance with your team, I challenge you to do that and just say, I will not tolerate this. You know, they encourage companies to look at time to promotion. You know, look at your numbers. Does everybody on your team look like you, or do you have diversity? Do you have underrepresented minorities on your team? If not, do something about that. One of the things that I challenge people to do is, once you take a stance, go out and connect with somebody on LinkedIn that doesn't look like you. Connect with, mentor, or sponsor somebody who doesn't look like you. And convert and become an upstander instead of a bystander when you see bullying, prejudice, or unconscious bias. And we're going to go into that into a little bit. The second A stands for appreciate. You have to appreciate that if you're not a Black or brown person, when you go out into the world, your experience is going to be different. And I just want to share a story here that I think I'm a badass motorcycle chick, okay? When I get off my motorcycle, I'll just tell you, I have black leather boots and black pants, and I have a black and yellow padded jacket, and I take my helmet off and I put on a black baseball cap because I have motorcycle hair and helmet hair. And I was riding, and I went into a Target with a friend out in the white neighborhood. Now, I walked in, and I walk like a badass motorcycle chick, okay? And this guy who was at Target in a white neighborhood comes up to me and says, do you work here? And I was like, oh, you must be kidding. And so I said back to him, well, do you work here? And he said, and he got angry, and he was like, I asked you, do you work here? And I don't know about you, Lori, but what color does everybody in Target wear? What color shirt does everybody in Target who works there? Red. We all know that. And I'm like, I work here to myself. So I just kept messing with him and said, do you work here? And finally, I just turned around and walked away and left him standing there. But I was like, that would never happen to a man who walked into Target, a white man in a white neighborhood in his motorcycle gear. And so, you know, there are hotels that I go into. There's a hotel in Nashville that I used to go to every year for a big conference, and guaranteed you, every time I would walk from my room down to breakfast without my briefcase in a suit, somebody would ask me for towels. And so it just tells you that you have to appreciate that your experience is different. So when something happens, as a manager, as a leader, just pause and appreciate that your experience is different. The other A is just apologize. You're going to make mistakes. This may be new to you, and just apologize if you make a mistake. Okay, F stands for feelings. And my next challenge is to get in touch with your own feelings. And what I say is just pause for a minute and imagine if that was your son or your brother or your husband or your father, what would you have felt? And that's what Black and brown people felt like when they watched George Floyd. And so just as a way to just have some empathy, just pause and say, wow, if that was my son and I was watching that. And the final for E is just empathy. Be present with people. So if you come to work and you don't know what to say, just be present. You know, I was driving to work one day, and I passed a guy on the road, and I drive fast, and I have a nice car, and when I pulled up to the stop sign, he pulled up behind me, and he came out with a crowbar, And he came up to my car, and he was kicking the side of my car, told me to get out of the car. He threatened to kill me. I pulled up into the middle of an intersection, turned my speaker on, called 911, and I wanted everybody to see because I knew I couldn't get away from him. And he went away. He finally left. I went to work up on the executive floor on all glass windows, and our president used to walk by every morning and give everybody the thumbs up. And so I'm standing in my office, and he gives me the thumbs up. I don't know what I did, but I remember he came in my office, he sat down, he took one look at me, he picked up his phone, called his admin, and said, cancel my appointments for the next hour. Put his phone down, and he didn't say one word. He sat there with me for an hour. It was the most empathetic thing anybody had ever done. Now, the person was arrested and charged for attempted assault, but what I took away from that was here was a white man who didn't try to fix it. He didn't say, well, let's call the cops. I'm going to do this. We can do this. He was just present with me. And so that's what I encourage people to do, is be present when things like this happens. So SAFE stands for take a stance, appreciate that when you walk out your door, your experience may be different than an underrepresented minority. F is feelings. Be transparent about your feelings or what you would feel if this happened to a family member. And E is empathy. Be present. The other thing, Lori, that I wanted to talk about a little bit is I talked about unconscious bias, prejudice, and bullying. And so I think it's important for us to understand what they are and how to respond to them. And this comes from Kim Scott's new book, another great resource for people. It's called Just Work, and it talks about how to get past these three barriers. And these are barriers that prevent us from shining. These are barriers that prevent us from having our brilliance. So if Lori is shining as a leader and raising her hand, and she struggles with somebody being prejudiced or bullying you, you're not going to shine. So what is unconscious bias? So I was at a kickoff dinner, a sales what do you call them, kickoff dinner one year, and I was sitting with 5 white guys, and one of the guys was bragging about his son was applying to Duke. And so they're going around, this guy is going on the table. So Jeff, and I'm using fake names here, okay? So Jeff says, hey, Mike, where are your kids applying to college? Hey, John, where are your kids applying to college? Hey, Brad, where are your kids applying to college? Hey, Tom, where are your kids applying to college? He turns to me and he goes, Sherilyn, do you think your kids will go to college? That is unconscious bias. He wasn't trying to be mean, but he had a bias that as a Black woman, would I think my kids would go to college? Now, I need to say that I didn't handle it very well. I was, my daughter had graduated. I told him, I said, my daughter has graduated from the Air Force Academy. She was a combat vet in Iraq. She went on to be a vice president at Goldman Sachs. And at the time, she was in a leadership role at Twitter. And I said, my baby went to the top liberal arts college in the country, and she's getting her MBA from NYU. He got embarrassed. He went to the president, and the president next day kind of admonished me for not playing nice in the sand. But I say that to say I learned that I didn't handle it the right way. So if you see unconscious bias, if you experience unconscious bias, you want to use the I word. And what would have been a better response is, I know you didn't mean it, but here's how that sounded to me. It's a chance, it's an opportunity for education. So many of us are bystanders. One of the ways to help everybody around you shine is to become an upstander. And as an upstander, if any of the guys were sitting there at the table and they heard that, they could have said to him, hey, I know you didn't mean that, but here's how it came across. The second one is prejudice. Now, I had one of my clients tell me this week, as a matter of fact, I was coaching a woman, and she said that she went to talk to her boss about a raise, and he said to her, well, you make good money for an account executive woman. And that is prejudice. And he didn't say for an account executive. And he said it, and she said, what did you say? He said, well, for a woman, you make good money. And she was horrified. That is prejudice. And so what prejudice is when somebody says something and they mean it. And how you respond to that is you use it. It is against the law. It is against our HR policies. That it is not okay. And so you want to talk about the law and policies and rules when somebody is prejudiced. And then there's bullying. One evening I walked by my CEO's office, and I'd been working on a big project, and I was there late. I was one of the last people leaving the office. And one of the things I had heard from my manager was that I'd been passed over by promotion, and he had said, I never said that I wanted to be promoted. And so I noticed that when the other guys worked on special projects, they would say, hey, I'm going to want a promotion. So I was walking past the CEO's office, and he's like, hey, Sherilyn, how's that project you've been working on? It was a huge RFP. And I said, yeah, it's looking really good. I'm really excited about it. And I was like, I'm going to want a promotion when this is done. And he said to me, you're a workhorse. Black women are workhorses, and Black women don't get promoted. Now, that's a bully, okay? And what you say to bullies is you say you either say, you can't talk to me that way, or you ask them, what do you get out of that? What do you get out of talking to people like that? And again, so unconscious bias, use I, prejudice, use you, and unconscious bias, use I, prejudice, use it, it's against the law, it's against our rules, and bullies, use you. If you want to see this framework and learn more about this, check out the book, Just Work by Kim Scott.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think we can open it up for questions. I know there was actually something, it's interesting. You talk, obviously we have to have flexibility, right? We have to have open-mindedness. We have to be open. How do we achieve that in the best way possible for our personal growth? Obviously, it's a big part of personal growth. We want to make sure we're leveraging our inner brilliance. We want to make sure we're having safe conversations. All this ties into how do we continue to be the best of ourselves, and the best of ourselves to support each other too.
Okay, so there's a couple of things that I encourage people to do, and the first one is what I call well and better. So, like when I end this discussion here, I will ask myself, okay, Sherilyn, what did you do well? And I'll say, okay, these are the couple things I think I did well, and what could you have done better? And then I will think about what I could have done better. Every single client call, every single presentation, I ask myself well and better. So I challenge our audience here today to start asking yourself, what did I do well in that call? What did I do well with that team meeting? What could I have done better? The second thing that you can do is you can ask your manager to ask you those questions, or ask your manager. So if I had time, I would say, Lori, at the end of this, what did I do well? And Lori, what's one thing I could have done better? The second thing you can do is, how do you find your blind spots? And what I say to people, if one person comes up to you and says, Lori, you're a horse, you're probably going to say they're an idiot. If 3 or 4 people come up to you and say, Lori, you're a horse, it's probably a conspiracy. They probably got together and said, let's go tell Lori she's a horse. But if 5 or 6 or 7 people come up to you and say that you're a horse, Lori, what should you get?
Find me a saddle and get me a bale of hay.
That's right. That's right. You should probably get a saddle. So how do you find out what your blind spots are? So here's what I encourage you to do. Go to your manager and say to them, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate me as a client services director? And it doesn't matter what the score they give you. What you want to do is, the second question you ask them is, what do I need to do to be a 10 in your eyes? And then just write. Don't say, yeah, but I was having a bad day, or yeah, but there's no yeah, but. You just write it down. If you go and ask that question, 5 or 6 of your peers, managers, people that report to you, you're going to find your blind spots. I mean, mine comes out over and over again that I'm not a great listener, and I work hard on improving my listening skills. And so the question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate me as whatever your title is? And then ask them, what do you need to do to be a 10 in their eyes? Now, another challenge I have for you is go home and ask your partner or your spouse that question. Go home and ask your kids that question. I used to ask my kids that question. Every time report cards came out at school, I would ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate me as a mommy? And again, I didn't really care whether they gave me a 1 or a 10 or a 9.5. I wanted to know what the gap was. And so those are two ways to grow and get feedback. And it's about continuous growth. You can do that. You can set it up in your phone to remind you every quarter to go ask some people, how would you rate me on a scale of 1 to 10?
Great. Okay. I think we'll open it up for questions because we're about 15 minutes away, but I want to open it up for questions so that we have some time to have our closing comments. So, the Q&A is open, everyone. So feel free to drop in. People are typing, so I'm just gonna give people a moment. Okay, so the one question I have, okay, so we just were talking a little bit about open-minded and flexible and how it's staying open-minded, but the question was, is code switching a form of flexibility? Somebody had mentioned that about code switching. We hadn't really talked about that, but somebody mentioned that as a concept.
So code switching comes up a lot, and I get asked about that. And I found this great little video, which I'm actually going to, I can't share. I don't know if you can. Anyway.
I think Andrew could pull it up for us. So Andrew, can you pull up the
Okay,
the
Andrew,
for
do
us,
you have
please?
this little video that I was that I'd love to share? Anyway, code switching is if Andrew can do this. So code switching is when you are one way at work and maybe a different way at home. So when my girls were young, they were in a private school on one side of town, and they were went to a rec center on a different side of town. And I would watch my girls that they would speak a certain way when they were in school. And then as soon as they go to the rec center, they would speak a different way, and they would change the way they walked and the way they talked and even how they dressed. Let's see if this comes up. Can you actually make that? I don't know if you've ever seen this. This is a GIF. And what President Obama is doing is when he walks down the aisle here, he's shaking hands, and he shakes hands differently with every single person. And so when he goes to one person, he shakes his hand like this, and he goes, there we go. What he just did was code switching. You see how he did that? You see how easily he did that? That's what we have to do. Thank you, Kyle. That's great. That's perfect. So when you think about code switching, yes, we may have to code switch, and that is part of your flexibility. But what wears you out is if you work someplace where you feel like you have to be on for 8 hours when you're at work, and you can't bring your authentic self to work. And so you want to be able to bring your authentic self to work. And when you have people who are upstanders and people who will stand up, and everybody is committed to creating some place where everybody can thrive, then you can do this. But there may be meetings. Maybe you go into a board meeting. Maybe you go into a meeting with the ELT, the leadership team, that you may have to do some code switching. But so you want to come back to your team and be able to be your authentic self. The other thing that I encourage people to do is find safe places within your company. Find those people that will love, respect, and that you can trust to be yourself. It is so hard to be on all day, 8 hours a day. So we can be flexible. We can learn to do that as more of an ebb and flow rather than, okay, I'm going to work, I have to be like this. Now I'm leaving and I can be myself.
Okay, another question is, as a woman, how do you break the bias in a male-dominated field?
So I think that if you are really competent with who you are, and one way to do that is, I think there are 3 mentors that everybody should have. And the first mentor should be somebody who is really good at your job. So Lori, you're right now, remind me what your title is. I'm sorry.
I'm an operational effectiveness implementation lead. So
Okay. Okay. So if I was you, Lori, and I would find somebody who was an operational effectiveness lead, who was knocking it out of the park, and go and have them mentor you so you can build your competencies. So that's the first one. If you're a meeting planner, you want the best meeting planner in the company to be your mentor. You want to learn those skills from them. The second mentor that everybody needs is somebody who looks like you, somebody you can be real with, somebody who's already advanced in their career, and they can help coach you on how to deal with some of the obstacles that you're going to run into. Just like I shared some of these ideas, I wish somebody had told me, that if I wanted to play nice with the guys when they had their unconscious bias, slapping them at the back of their heads was not probably the best thing to do. Felt good at the time. Sometimes you just want to say, you're just being a jerk. But that's criticizing somebody, and that just raised their defensiveness. But if I had challenged him to be better, he would have raised his game. So find somebody who looks like you. And the third thing that every one of us needs is a sponsor. And a sponsor is somebody who's at the table when raises, bonuses, promotions come out, when they start assigning special projects to people. You want somebody at that table who has your back. And I recall that I worked for a company once, and the CEO gave out an unexpected bonus to his 5 leaders. And he said, there's $125,000 on the table. I wasn't in the room. And he said, how about we just give $25,000? This is a one-off kind of a kicker to our 5 GMs. And so just before when the meeting was wrapping up, one of the guys said, yeah, but my guy on my team, he really had an amazing year. I would like to give him a little bit more. And he said, would anybody want to give up some of their 25? And so he said, well, I'm just going to take it from Sherilyn. So he took 5 from me. So I had 20. His guy had 30. Everybody else had 25. And then another guy goes, well, my guy's not quite that good, but he's almost that good. I'd like to give him another 2,500. So he took 2,500 from my pot. Another guy said the same thing, took 25. So now one guy's got 30. 2 guys have got 27.5. I'm down to 15 because they took 10,000. So my boss comes to me and says, here's Sherilyn, here's a kicker, here's $15,000. I was like, cool. I thought it was a great deal. Well, I later heard kind of through the grapevine that the different guys had gotten so much more than me. Several years later, I ran into somebody and I said, what happened with that? I wasn't in the room, and they told me, you didn't have a sponsor at the table, Sherilyn. You didn't do anything wrong. You were the top performer. You should have gotten the 30, but when it came to advocating, you just didn't have a sponsor. So as women, as underrepresented minorities, you have to have a sponsor at the table. Go and find you a sponsor. And what you do with your sponsor is they're not your mentor. They're not there to teach you skills. They're not there to vent. They are just there for you to share your greatest hits with them. You get a great accolade from a client. You say, hey, check this out. You meet with them once a quarter and tell them all the great things that you've done, just so that when they go into the room, they know all the great things that you've done. And they said, oh, no, you're not taking this from Sherilyn. She's had an incredible year. And if I had somebody who said that, that would never have happened. So get a mentor, have 2 mentors, and have a sponsor.
okay. I know actually we are starting to do a lot more mentorship programs. Do you have any advice? I know you're saying about getting your mentor. Any advice for mentors themselves?
I do. And this is advice for mentors and mentees, and I call it how to get an A+ in mentoring. And whether you're a mentor or a mentee, there's 5 A's, and I think this is also one of the handouts, so you don't have to jot this down. But what I talk about when I talk about the 5 A's, the first one is have your what you want to accomplish. The first A is accomplish. So with your mentor, what do you want to accomplish? As a mentor, make sure that you understand what your mentee wants to accomplish. How long do they want this to last? What do they want to get out of it? Do they want you to coach them on a specific skill? Like Lori, do you want to learn process improvement? Do you want to learn how to leverage technology in your solutions? Nobody can be all answers to you, so be very specific. As a mentor, be very specific with your mentee about what they want. The second A is agenda. Make sure that your mentees come with an agenda. And I mean big A and little a. The big A is, again, what they want out of the relationship. I want you as my mentor for 3 months, 6 months, 90 days till I get promoted. What is their agenda? I want to get promoted. I want a raise. I want a new job. Make sure that there's an agenda. And as the mentee, make sure that you actually do that agenda. You write out that agenda before each meeting. The next A is action items. You have to list your action items out and update. There's nothing I hate more than mentoring somebody and I give them a connection or a lead or an idea and I never hear, what happened. So as a mentor, hold your mentees accountable. Ask them, okay, we talked about this. What did you discover? What did you learn? So accountability is the next one. As a mentee, take accountability for it. When you're setting the agenda, if you are the mentee, handle all the logistics. Where are we having coffee? What virtual platform are we going to use? Send out the reminder message. And the final one is appreciate. Say thank you, and don't just have an attitude of gratitude, have an action of gratitude. And what I mean by an action of gratitude is I shout out my mentors on LinkedIn. I shout out my mentors when I'm coaching and training. I want people to know who helped drive my career. I want them to get credit for that. So say thank you to your mentor. Send them a note. Say thank you on LinkedIn. If you have a success, acknowledge them. There's nothing greater than saying, I got this promotion and thanks to this person for helping, to challenge me along the way. So those are kind of the 5 A's for both mentees and mentors so that we both do a good job in our role.
I know a couple more questions came in, but I know we're almost at time. So hopefully I can maybe get those questions to Sherilyn and maybe we can get some more pearls of wisdom from her because this has been amazing. We could go on for hours with this. It's been great. So Sherilyn, I'll just ask if you have any closing remarks for the group. Thank you all for your questions. Thank you all for your participation.
So what I want to leave, first of all, I want to say thank you to everybody for joining. Thank you to all my friends and colleagues and former team members and all the warm wishes and the kind notes. It just warmed my heart. It just made me smile. I feel like I'm sitting in a room in Bridgewater chatting with you guys right now. I want to just leave you with a wish, and my wish is that you become an upstander instead of a bystander, and that you stand up when you see unconscious bias, when you see prejudice, when you see bullying, and that you help create the type of work environment where everybody can shine. They can shine themselves, they can shine on everybody else, and that you create a place where everyone can feel like they belong and that everyone can thrive. And that's my wish for everybody as we close. Accept my challenges, take and do one thing, and I'm going to turn it back to Lori, who's going to tell you guys how you can go about getting handouts and summaries of what we talked about today.
Sherilyn, thank you so much. It was so great to see you. Like I said, it was so great for me personally, and I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you all for participating. We actually have a QR code that we're gonna put up right now. Please make sure you scan this. It will give you access to some of the materials that Sherilyn was referencing in throughout the conversation. It's also, there's the information on what's in the cards with the book and the website there. And when you download the QR code, we ask, it's up for a very limited time, so you're better off doing it right now if you can. We'll also send it out after this meeting along with the recording, so you can just quickly get at it and get that those materials. When you go there, you'll get to a landing page and it'll have Sherilyn's contact information. So if you want to reach out, I'm sure she would love hearing from you. Again, Sherilyn, on behalf of REACH and the Services Engagement Committee, we want to thank you for joining us today. It was, again, so good to see you. And I hope everyone enjoyed the conversation and have a great Friday and a great weekend.
Thank you, Lori. And I miss all of you guys too. All right, bye.
Take care, everyone. This ends our call. Thank you all for joining, and stay safe and stay well.